on this computer. There we go. And there we go. All right. So, hello and welcome, everyone, to History 1120. I'll be your instructor. My name is Mr. Hall Patton, but you can just call me HP for short. So, the um, this class is actually the second half of American history. The first half covers from pre-colonial times all the way to 1877. This continues that story from there. The reason why the split is at 1877 is because that is where Reconstruction ended. So this class deals with pretty much everything post Reconstruction, though we will be going back and forth in the timeline quite a bit. It's not strictly linear. That being said, um, the uh, the the class is not necessarily, you don't have to have taken the previous half to have to be in this class. That's not required. Um, and so this is going to be um, well, and my cat will sometimes join us because, well, that's a consequence of teaching from home. um, but so a lot of this class is oriented around historical significance, and we'll get into what that means. But I want you all to keep that in mind throughout all of these lectures. That historical significance is the main thing that that I'm trying to get you guys to grasp here. So, um, the uh, the history here is this, well, history in general is the story of us. Um, as I think the History Channel used to like to put it. Uh, but the uh, the main purpose of significance is understanding how it's important to the larger story. So when we're talking about like things like Reconstruction, which will be on Thursday, or you know immigration or anything along, or which I think is the next lecture, um, each one of these um, will be each lecture will be oriented around a particular subject, but you got to think about like why this is important, why it's not just important to like the story that's being told, but also important to you, and how this relates to how America is today. Um, so the with each week we'll be doing a lecture and a class discussion, and hopefully those class discussions will uh, will help you guys understand this further. Um, and oh, there is somebody wanting in. Hold on. Um, will help you guys understand this further and uh, get through uh, get through the tests, which are pretty much all about identifying significance. Um, so, with that being said, let me turn on screen sharing real quick, and we'll go here. All right, and that should be screen sharing properly. Um, so I emailed everyone a copy of this. This is the syllabus, but you can also find it on Learn by clicking the course. And in fact, why don't we just show that? We'll go to first go to Learn, and then um, pick the course. Then this little tab over here says course information. When you click that, you'll get pretty much everything you're going to need for this class, which is, the syllabus, the lecture link with all the extra stuff about like if you wanted to use your phone to dial in or something along those lines. Apparently, you can do this via a landline. Um, but you um, go here for going to lecture in that, which will be at the same time, 12:30 to 1:15 every Tuesday and Thursday. I will also be having office hours right after that. But you can find the lecture recordings, which I have to upload it, so it takes some time for it to upload in that, especially if I'm meeting with anyone after class. Um, then the quizzes will be in here. Reading journals, you'll turn them in here, and the exams here. Pretty obvious. Um, you will also have a little notification on the course dashboard right here when quizzes and that are due. Um, so, with all that being said, um, Chase is asking, will we go to the present day? And the answer is yes. We will definitely, the last week, we'll be talking about how all of this kind of comes together. We'll be mostly looking at that week, trying to finish the lecture on the global war on terror, which is still going on. Um, but yeah, it goes all the way to the present. Um, so, with that being said, lecture link is also on the syllabus. Um, and everything is digital in this class, so you don't need to buy any textbook or anything along those lines. That's all linked within the um, syllabus. As you can see here, every reading will be just right here, linked, ready for you to click through and um, you know go to the reading for that week. Everything that you will be reading is primary sources, um, and we'll get to the specific information. Um, so hopefully by the end of this course, you guys will be able to fulfill these specific um, uh, goals that you will be able to identify cultural significance, write and argue in a historical manner, um, understand events by placing them in a narrative, and interpret primary sources. Um, there will be 3 different types of assignments. Reading responses, um, that should be 50 points per. Um, hmm, that's not good. Well, it says 50 points per here. um, then you have periodic quizzes, which are only 10 points. These are basically multiple choice quizzes that you will take on Learn. It will typically be up on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then they will be available all the way until Friday at midnight. And they're short quizzes. They're 5-question quizzes, multiple choice, and so each question is worth 2 points. It's really to make sure that you're actually engaging with the class and understanding the more nuances of the lectures and readings. Um, then there are the tests. These are the midterm and the final, which are the majority of your grade. Um, reading responses will be turned in at the same time as the tests, so you will so those are big blocks of grades. By the midterm, you will have a pretty good sense of where you're going. Um, so the thing that you have to worry about immediately is the reading journal. So the reading journal is essentially you're just going to be um, writing 100 words per week on that week's readings. So just compile that all into a singular document. These readings are normally pretty short, and it's all I want to see is that you. That is supposed to be silenced. Sorry about that. But the reading journal will be um, will have um, will have 100 words on just whatever your thoughts are on those readings. Some of these readings will be, you know, like major pieces of legislation or somebody's journal, or even there will be one week in which the readings aren't really readings at all, but actually just a bunch of music. Um, so there will be you can react to that however you want, just as long as you are writing about 100 words and actually thinking about it. Do not waste time summarizing the the readings. That's You only have 100 words, and obviously I've already read this stuff, so I don't need a summary of it. You just be wasting time. So especially use that 100 words to sort out your thoughts about the readings. Um, this is not only to show that you actually are reading, but also to show that you're engaging with it. That if you're just summarizing it, well, one, some of these things you could easily be summarizing it by looking it up on in an encyclopedia, but that in fact, I've had students do that, and it proves that you're doing exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. So don't just read the assignments, write down your thoughts. It's actually a pretty simple assignment, but 100 words a week. The reading journals will be turned in twice. You will have one time where you turn it in right before the midterm, and another right before the final. Um, and Emily says that she's having trouble with internet stuff. So if anybody is having trouble with their internet or anything, just realize this is being recorded and it will be uploaded. Um, so if you miss something, you can easily go back and see that again. Um, then there are the quizzes. Now the quizzes, I already explained, they're multiple choice. You just you know there'll be simple questions, like one possible question that comes from the previous half was like, um what is the shining city on a hill? And this is an important piece, like this is an important read in the first half that talks about American exceptionalism in that, and really explains where we get our ideas on that. But turned out to be but the standard conception of that term is that it's about American exceptionalism, except for there was no such thing as an America in 1622 or 20, sometime around there, when the speech was actually made. So there will be things that will be in there specifically to catch people who are not paying attention. So one of the possible ones was like an electrified city for that. And one of the possible answers of that was like an electrified city or something along those lines. But obviously that's incorrect. Also, American exceptionalism would have been incorrect. The actual answer would be um, a, a creating an exemplary Christian city, or Christian colony. That was the actual intent of the speech. So keep that in mind when you're taking those quizzes, is that if you that it will be designed to catch people who are using Wikipedia to try to answer things. um, Not that Wikipedia is necessarily a bad thing, but understand it is a encyclopedia and does not suffice for attending lecture. Finally, there are the tests. Now, the tests, we will have a study session before the actual midterm, and possibly, if we have enough time, before the final. Um, and those study sessions will get a little bit deeper into this, but what the tests consist of are what are called identification questions. And essentially, it gives you a term that you have to identify, and specifically identify its significance. Um, that significance will um, will greatly depend on your interpretation of this history. So we'll get into that in just a well, I can yeah, we'll get into that in just a little bit, but the main thing is keep thinking about significance while we go over these things. Hold on a second. All right, so finally, you will see here, there's just week 1, week 2. It's just numbering the weeks. The This is all subject to change, like sometimes there will be days in which I know there's a spring break coming up, so spring break is obviously not an actual week. Um, and so just keep that in mind when you're reading through these things. The main thing is, in that reading journal, you should have, week 1, you talk about the Mississippi Black Codes and the various amendments. That's actually a pretty short read. And the amendments, I'm sure you guys have been hearing plenty about the 14th Amendment recently. And so, these are all the Reconstruction amendments, and they were kind of reacting to the Mississippi Black Codes. So, and various other Southern things. So these readings will slot into the lecture in that. So I would advise trying to read them, tonight or tomorrow night. They're a quick read. It's pretty easy. And try to read these things each week, and they're all linked right here. So, any questions on the syllabus before we start talking about what historical significance is? No questions? All right. So let me stop the share.
I had a question about it says papers are due in printed copy. That is not necessary for this class. We would just be turning everything in over.
It still says printed because it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is designed to. Hold on. All right. So no, that would be incorrect as well. So I'll have to rewrite that and re-upload it. This syllabus is originally meant for in-class stuff, but because of COVID and everything, had to rapidly change everything. So I'm still trying to work out some pieces of this because of that. So yeah, it's not paper. You will be everything will be turned in on Learn. That is annoying that that's still there. All right. Yeah, so pay that no heed. I will upload a updated version of that once we are done here. Let me highlight that real quick. There we go. So are there any other questions? Yep.
I had one.
Oh, go ahead.
I had one quick question about the quizzes. How many do we get? One attempt to take the quiz?
Yeah.
Or how many attempt? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a quick multiple choice 5-question quiz for each one. Generally dictated by what I have emphasized in the lecture. So the be sure to be up to date on the lectures by that point. As I said, all the lectures will be recorded and uploaded, though it will take time after because my upload speed is absolutely terrible. Um, the um, but yeah, it's you don't you can't have multiple chances to take the test because that would does not show whether or not you're thinking about it, and just shows that you're able. At that point, it would just be showing whether or not you are able to game the quiz. Um, but the quiz is meant to show whether or not you are paying attention in class. Um, any other questions before we move on to what historical significance is?
I don't have a question. I'm just going be I'm missing I might miss the beginning of Thursday's class because I'm getting a coronavirus shot. So is that okay if I like come in a little late? Or I might miss the whole class. Is that okay?
Yeah, well, you can um you can catch up with the recorded quiz.
Okay.
Um, another part about attending class is that there will be class discussions after the lecture. This is to help you guys understand what historical significance is. So we'll just be like posing some open-ended question about like, why did this happen or something like that. And it's up to you guys to think and discuss about that. And it will really show what historical significance is in relation to the lecture. So that will hopefully help. But the problem is with if you are only watching it as the recorded version, you can't participate in the class discussion because, well, it's already been recorded. Um, so don't worry about being late on something like that. Hopefully, I have to like literally click admit to every single person. So hopefully I don't miss that while I'm lecturing. Um, but you can come. That's good reason to miss classes getting your shot.
Thank
Um,
you.
you know, getting immunized is one of the most important things we can all be doing right now. Any other questions? Okay, so what the thing about historical significance, that's the thing that you're going to be looking at in terms of the in terms of every single test, and every single exam. I mean, the midterm and the final, you will be identifying the historical significance of something. So that can come in many forms, and so you will. Before each test, you will also be getting a study guide. Um, I might modify that study guide depending on what we go over in class. So you won't get that until about a couple weeks prior to the midterm and final. But on there, it will say specifically that there are these kinds of historical significance. Um, so the main thing that you have to think about when talking about historical significance is that it's how is this thing, this event, person, place, thing, whatever, how is it important to the greater story? Because history is the story of us, right? So the how does it slot into that story and advance that story in some way? Um, so significance can be about like how one thing caused another. Um, how uh going back to the previous class, like the significance of the Salem witch trials was more about how it started changing the colonial system as a whole, and really showed a centralization of power. um that is kind of the the cause and effect significance. One thing causes another. But you also have like political consequences. Now that can go all the way to today's. For instance, when we're talking about Reconstruction, that's coming up a lot right now, especially with the fact that we're impeaching the president for the second time. And the uh, and the first president to be impeached was a Reconstruction president, and so you can talk about how that's related to now and things along those lines. But political consequences also can be about the time itself. So, for instance, if we were doing the first half, what are the political consequences of slavery? Well, obviously, the Civil War. So you can talk about political consequences then and political consequences now. Um, of course, you have to actually relate it to the thing. Not just saying that like during Reconstruction an impeachment happened and now there's an impeachment happening. That's not really connected. But if you talk about how that impeachment showed a change from presidential Reconstruction to what's sometimes called radical Reconstruction, you could talk about how this impeachment might show some sort of political change happening now. So you can talk about parallels. You can talk about how uh, things were happening contextually, all along those lines. And that's really the other thing is contextual meaning. What do these events have in terms of meaning to this larger story? You know, Reconstruction is right after the Civil War. We will be talking a little bit about that on Thursday, and the you can talk about the contextual meaning as being the nation trying to sort itself out after the Civil War. You can talk about how it's important to civil rights and things along those lines. For instance, when you guys read the amendments, you will find that the amendments that you're reading this week are the basis of civil rights. They're known as the Civil Rights Amendments or the Reconstruction Amendments. Um, and these are the basis for all civil rights acts. Well, at least after 1865. But one ends slavery, one creates civil rights, and one creates voting rights. Um, we will see that it's a long battle to actually administer those rights, and that will take us all the way into the 1960s. Whereas they tried to pass them through amendments to the Constitution in the 1860s, but the you can talk about all that contextual meaning when referring to the specific word Reconstruction. So that will be kind of what I'm trying to get you guys to understand through these lectures, and also, the readings. You see how the readings complement the lecture. So that's how we will also engage in discussion after class. This is after lecture. You will be able to, pretty much ask questions yourself as well. If you're not quite understanding why something happened, because history is a weird and wonky thing sometimes. The story can go all over the place, and you will. It is perfectly understandable to be confused as to why something happened. And a lot of the time, why something happened is actually a pretty open question. Uh, for instance, you guys all have heard of the Cold War. Why the Cold War happened is a massive debate in the historical profession. So there is no actual answer to why that happened. So sometimes that confusion is purposeful. But that will be a time to work out that confusion, to try to figure out like why these things matter, and why we're taking this course. So the uh, the discussion will mostly hinge on the lecture, but we can also discuss the readings. Now, one thing that you guys will be all the readings will be primary sources. So can anybody tell me what, it's kind of foolhardy to ask questions, but we'll see if we can get this right. Can anybody actually tell me what the difference is between a primary and secondary source?
I can. I think I can. I'll take a stab at it.
Mhm.
So a primary source is a source that comes directly from the person who's. It comes directly from the person who the material is referencing. It's like a primary source would be a letter from Alexander Hamilton, talking about himself. A secondary source would be a historian talking about Alexander Hamilton in a different context other than the first person point of view.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different kinds of primary sources. Like because it's also very much about how you are using it. So the main thing is a primary source is the thing that you're referencing when you're saying when you're giving evidence for something, right? A secondary source is using primary sources. So, like, if somebody is writing about Alexander Hamilton, his writings, but also his people writing about him at the time, people who knew him, people writing diaries that just happened to mention him, all that kind of stuff is gathered by a historian to um, write a biography of Alexander Hamilton, which very famously was recently done by Ron Chernow and made into a musical. And the um, the that Ron Chernow's book would be a secondary source. So a secondary source is a work that is using primary sources. Um, that will typically be historians, or even sometimes it will be journalists or anything along those lines. But journalists can also be primary sources. They're that hazy line in between. It depends on if they are the thing that you are referencing or if they are, in fact, referencing something else. Just a news article saying this happened, that's a primary source. A newspaper that's saying this person says this, well, that person saying that is the primary source. The article is just the secondary source quoting it. So that's that. Um, Primary sources and secondary sources can actually sometimes be a little bit hazy. But everything you will be reading is going to be a primary source. And there's another kind of source that a lot of people don't talk about, which is tertiary sources. Now, tertiary sources are big reference things like, encyclopedias is a perfect example of a tertiary source, or something that it doesn't really directly deal with what you're talking about, like a philosophy book that you happen to be referencing as just because it's just a philosophical statement, or a poem that you're referencing. Those are tertiary sources. They're not. There's something that you don't need to reference. So this is where I get to talk about Wikipedia. So one of the things I know you guys will be doing, no matter what I say, is using Wikipedia because, well, you guys are all on the internet right now, and it's probably the first thing that shows up when you search a term. But I want to urge caution when you're looking up stuff on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a starting point for understanding something. It is never an endpoint. It is an encyclopedia. It is a tertiary source. So what that means is if you are taking one of these tests and you're using Wikipedia, you are going to get the question wrong. So use Wikipedia with caution. I'm not opposed to Wikipedia. If we were writing essays in this class, that would be fine to reference it for common knowledge stuff. Common knowledge meaning something that is just generally understood to be true. Facts. But you do need to dig deeper if you want to go any further. So, as I say, I urge caution. The And finally, let's talk about how you cite things, because you might want to quote sources in the reading journal. And what that means is that you will need to cite it. So, hold on, let me hit screen. Whoop. No, I need hold on. Should be this one. There we go. Cool. All right, it's in the right place. So, when you are writing your reading journals, you don't necessarily need to cite anything if you're not quoting anything, but if you quote something, you need to cite it. So, let's say, I don't know, you're taking a quote from the Mississippi Black Codes, right? And that you're just quoting this first line, about vagrancy. And you say blah blah blah. Why is it bold? And the codes say that. Well, when you quote something, you always need to cite that. You need to cite where the quotation is coming from. So in this class, you will be using footnotes, but you don't need to use the actual, in the history profession, we use what's called the Chicago Manual of Style. It's a specific citation method. You don't need to do that. In fact, you can use parentheticals citation if you want. I'm not going to instruct how to do that, but you can use that if you know how to use MLA and APA. But the this will be with footnotes via CMS. So you need to cite it by putting a footnote there. And for the purposes of this class, you could literally just say that. You could literally just say that for the for where that quote is coming from. But say you're quoting a book, and say this book says, God damn it, X, and you want to quote some book that isn't in the syllabus. That's fine. In fact, I highly encourage that. But in order to properly cite it, I need to be able to find that book myself. And that's the point of citation, is to be able to find the thing that you are referencing. So how you do that is that you have author's name, then the title of the book. Is this really, this is probably really tiny for you guys. There we go. Then you have in here the publisher, the city name of the publisher, then the publisher, then the copyright date. So that is the proper way to use Chicago Manual of Style, is that you have author's name, title of the book, city name, publisher, copyright date, all in this particular format. But you don't need to worry about being that coherent in this class. I am not a stickler for this. The point being, I need to be able to know what book you are referencing. Oh yeah, and also the page number, of course. But I need to know what the book is and where to find that quote. That's the whole point of citation, is to make sure that all of your evidence is verifiable. This also applies to any time you have statistics. You need to be able to cite the statistics that you are referring to. So you need to, there's many ways of citation. If you want to use APA, if you want to use MLA, that's fine. If you really just can't remember all of this stuff, you can look up what the Chicago Manual of Style does for each citation. That's a lot of work, and I understand, so you don't really need to do that. all you need to do is make sure that I can find that book with the information that you are citing. And especially include page numbers. Don't if you're quoting a specific thing and it's a 300-page book and you just cite only the book, that makes it pretty impossible to find that one quote. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack. So include the page number especially so that I can find that quote. With that being said, are there any questions on historical significance, the way that we're going to be talking about this stuff in discussion, primary, secondary sources, and, how to cite things? All right, well, that is pretty much everything we need to go over today. I want you guys to make sure that you have read the Mississippi Black Codes and the Reconstruction Amendments for Thursday. Normally we will pretty much go right up until the end of our given time, but today we can end early. If there are any more questions, I will stick on here to answer them. And oh yes, also I forgot to say my office hours. If you guys want to come and talk to me privately, I will be holding office hours specifically right after class from 2 to 3 every day. But since it's all digital, you need to email me ahead of time and ask for a link to create that, because I have to actually create the link to do that. I will keep my email open for that hour, and as long as you email me, hopefully I will respond quickly and send you that link, and then create the meeting session. Yeah, so if there are no other questions, you're welcome to go ahead and have a good day. Otherwise, I will stick on for a few more minutes if anybody else has any other questions.
So I had a quick question about week 1. So after we get done reading the Mississippi Black Codes and the 13 or the amendments, Reconstruction Amendments, so we just write 100 words about that and maybe a Google Doc and just keep a note of each week and then submit that whenever it's due.
You don't have to do it in Google Docs or anything. That's just the software I use. But yeah, just write 100 words per an entry. Make sure that those entries are obviously separate. You don't want to have it all one big paragraph of 100-word things where I can't even tell when you're skipping subjects.
Right.
Make sure that it's obvious that this is week 1, this is week 2, this is week 3, and write about 100 words. That should be pretty simple. That's less than a page. So you're writing about a little less. Actually quite a bit less than. It's about half a page per a week. So it's not that much writing, and it's just your personal opinions on stuff. So that's all I want to see, is that you're engaging with it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So we don't turn those in every week. We'll turn them in at like the midterm and then at the final, or do we turn it in each week? We turn in our ones for the readings.
It's at the midterm and the final. There will be a submission thing. I forgot what they're called on Learn, but on Learn there will be a button that'll be like upload the file here, and it will be right around the midterms and right around the finals. Typically, like for instance, the final will be available for like the entire week of the finals, but the submission for the reading journal will only be available for like half of that week. But yeah, keep it all in one document until you submit it, then you can, I mean, you could keep all of it in one document, but that might be a bit confusing. So just make sure that you have the first 7 or 8 weeks for the first reading journal, and then the next 7 or 8 weeks for the second, all in one document.
Okay. And then is that all we have every week, or do we also have like a quiz for each reading every week, or the quiz is not every week?
The quizzes can happen at any point.
Okay.
There will be, and they are essentially how it would be done if we were actually in classes, that it would literally just be the first 10 minutes of class and it could be any class. Although I'd be giving a very different kind of quiz then. But online had to change up the format, and so the essentially I will say, this week there will be a quiz, and I will probably email it saying so that people will be notified. You will also be have like a little notification thing on Learn when I put that up. So you'll have like 2 or 3 days to complete it. It's like 5 questions. It shouldn't take more than like 10 minutes. But the yeah, it will happen at random, and it really depends on if if we have time to do it. Really depends on the lecture itself.
Okay. And then, sorry, one more question. Do you have like a calendar? Is there like a calendar on the syllabus where it says like exactly what's due each week? Because is it just like the summaries each week?
It just says week 1, week 2, week 3, because the week can be variable, especially when we are dealing with there might be some. So if we have like a snow day or something like that, that might actually extend the semester. It's weird what they're doing in terms of required dates. So I chose to simply have it as just week 1, 2, 3, and so forth. During lecture, I will be saying like when things are due in that, but the main thing is each week we'll have the readings, and that's the only thing you have to keep track of.
Okay.
Making sure that you're reading.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to talk to you privately after everybody left.
All right. Well, I will be holding office hours in a little bit if you'd like to just email me directly.
I mean, I can. It was just something that would take less than like 5 minutes.
Well, if you want to have it, well, let's see if Jaden is going to.
I don't really care if he hears it. It's
yeah.
it's okay. I just wanted like barely anyone to know. Okay, whatever.
All right.
So I did want to let you know
Hold on,
that.
let me stop the recording though.
Okay.